Welcome to 9742. This is professional civil engineering, and as I checked the Moodle yesterday, there was around about between 75 and 80 students that had signed on for the course. So for some of you, and I'm looking down the list of names, some of you have been with courses with me before, so I welcome you guys back to this course. And for many of you that are new to my courses, welcome to this course. And if you're new to the university this year doing your master's studies, welcome to UNSW. First detail is that the Moodle will be updated weekly with the release of lecture material. However, the way that I've got the course set up is I'm actually going to teach nominally in three-week periods and assess you by way of internal class tests on those three-week sessions. So it's not quite exactly the same as that, but close enough to it. There'll be no external examination in the formal examination period, and as a consequence, what I want you to learn is the subjects that we deal with in those 3-week blocks, and then deal with each one of those elements as you progress through the course. All right, I'll share the screen and go through the Moodle with you at this point. So just coming up now is the screen, and what you will find with that is I opened the Moodle up last night, and I said to you on the Moodle by way of the announcement, so if you are new to the course and you haven't seen all of this, you probably will have got the announcement that comes over the university email system to you, but you just click on the button as I've just shown there, and that comes up, and the topics, welcome to the course. All right, so excuse me, the way that comes together, as of last night, there was about 75 enrolments. Some of you are in the 8621 Master of Engineering degree, and some of you are in the 8338 course. I would think that would be the majority of the students, but there may be some graduate diploma students that are just starting out. You'll be still doing the same coursework content, so I don't see any discrimination there between those different degrees. All right, in terms of the course and its conduct, I'd like to know where the students are located. And so if you're at a location away from UNSW watching this online, can you send me an email to this address on the screen, my email address? You'll also pick it up on the Moodle. And tell me who you are, include your name and your ZID detail, so your student number, and the locality where you are in. And there's a reason for that. In doing the online tests, if I've got people in Europe, okay, they're going to be 12 hours away from us, so I don't want those guys doing tests at 10 and 11 o'clock at night. And likewise, I don't want to start early in the day if it's going to be at the wrong time of the day for other students elsewhere around the world. So just send me the advice of where you are. When you do so, would you please add the course CVEN 9742. I have a undergraduate thesis course, and I've asked the same of those students earlier this afternoon, but I didn't ask them to put down their course number. So for the majority, I won't have to follow up with this course as to what course you're in, because you'll declare that you're in 9742. Okay, what else is there? The way that I've got this course structured, you guys will be writing a journal entry each week, and you're going to submit as a substantial piece of work a reflective journal on what you've learnt through the course over the 8 lectures that will run for this course. Whilst the course is 10 weeks long, we don't have a lecture in week 6, and in the case there for Easter Monday public holiday, this course won't be run on that Easter Monday in week 8. So as a result there, you'll only get 8 out of the 10 lectures with me face to face. That's probably about it in terms of the welcome and the details on this frontis page. I'll go back to the Moodle now. The next detail that I opened and released late this afternoon was the course outline. I'll be going through that in detail with you this evening. And the second point following on after that is key support services offered by UNSW. And the slide that is actually uploaded there, I was asked to distribute to my class. You'll see it in your other postgraduate courses, as all the lecturers are required to do that. For those new to the university, Professor Tommy Weedman is your academic advisor for the postgraduate students. I can give you assistance if you need any. I'm the Year 4 academic advisor for the undergraduate civil and environmental engineering courses, and consequently I'm abreast and across most of those issues that you might be dealing with. And as a familiar face to you, you guys can contact me at your pleasure, and the way that you can do that is you can ring me by telephone, you can email me, and if you're at the university, I'm in room CE 211 on the 2nd floor, and if you see that my light's on, knock on the door. I'm happy to speak with you at any time. If I've got some appointments at that stage, I will quickly tell you about that, and we'll make another time that you can see me during the same day. Okay, and the way you know that I'm on campus is if the light is on in my office. I'm in the university. If I'm not there when you knock, wait around. I won't be too far away, and but you can come back later in the day if you choose to do some other detail if I'm not there in the office when you call. All right, happy to help you with all sorts of issues, whether it's issues for this course, whether it's issues that you're having with your other courses of study and you want to seek some guidance or assistance on, I can give you that advice. And the other detail is there that if you've got any personal issues about study and settling in to your life here and at UNSW, I'm happy to talk to you on that. So you've got to approach me, but I'll give you the support that you need. All right, running down the front page here, there's a discussion board with Robert Holdham as a forum. The way that I conduct all of my courses, I try and get back to you within a day of you raising questions or concerns to me. The way I do that is I check on the Moodle each day for questions that are coming up in the morning, and ordinarily I would be responding to those in the morning. So if you're at home doing work or elsewhere during the day doing work, if you post your questions onto this discussion forum, I will send you a return within a day. Usually, as you get into the swing of things, if you've got the question overnight, you put it up overnight, and you'll have the answer in the morning as I go through those emails and through the forum for that discussion. Don't send me questions that you're asking about assignments and other details by email. And the reason for that is I have an enormous amount of email traffic with student counselling issues, dealing with the university in general, and I don't want to have mixed up in the middle of the email buried questions about you and your course materials, because I can gloss over those, and I don't hit the emails as regularly as what I do when I'm teaching for giving you the assistance online through the Moodle. So if you send me questions that I think are worthy of a response on the Moodle, I will respond to you, and I'll just say stick your question and repost it onto the Moodle, and then I will answer it once it goes up there. That will probably cost you in time between 1 and 2 days. Okay, so I'm happy for you to give me any questions of concern that you have on a personal basis, and I will deal with that one-on-one with you over the email or at my office or by telephone. So use all of those three for personal issues. But if you're trying to get responses from me over course material and how to respond to it, stick it onto the Moodle, onto this discussion forum. All the other students will see this detail, and if you've got the question, you just save them asking the same question, because everybody will be tracking that discussion board on a daily basis. All right. Okay, last part on the discussion board. Whilst I do work here on some of the weekends, to be sure, if you need information over a weekend, if you put your responses up onto the Moodle on Friday by lunchtime, I will answer those in the afternoon so that you'll have your answer that afternoon. So that if I'm away over the weekend, students can still progress with a clear line in the sand with your responses by Friday afternoon. Okay. Failing that, I will deal with them on Monday morning. Okay. All right. So that discussion forum, you just click onto this link here, and you'll get that. At the moment, that's active, but there's been no responses. So we'll continue on. I expect after today we'll get some further responses. All right. All right. Lecture recordings. All of the lectures will be recorded, as will be the workshops. So this will be a 3-hour recorded session. I can't go for 3 hours without having a break and getting a drink and all the other things that you need to do during the day. And so we will probably go through in probably 50-minute sessions, have a 10-minute break. I will open up the discussion board for your questions at that point in time, and I will deal with the questions that you have before we go on to the next and the third successive hour. The lecture material and the workshops will be fully combined, so I will record the workshop sessions for you with this lecture material. Whilst the lectures aren't compulsory to attend, you will need to review these lectures in your own time. But for sanity and for digestion of the information, getting it in real time is actually a good way to deal with that. You can add to your lecture notes, and you can add to your writings things that come up in the discussion that I give to enhance your learning even further. Okay, so that's the way that that will work. Yeah, that will cover the details. So if you want to look at the lecture recordings, you will be able to see that. I think in the case of the first week, it might take a day or so to get that lecture recording up, but they should be available on a routine basis after week 2 regularly for that purpose. Okay, I have got 2 individual assignments for you guys. There's no group assignment for this course, just 2 individual assignments. One is a reflective journal, the other one is a dot point brief. I will go through those probably in the second hour with you, and that will lead for further discussion into the workshop session, which I've got detail as well. There is a detail for you with respect to submission portals for the reflective journal, and I've also given to you some examples of how those journals may be written in a course that I did on human resources management back in 2012, and I have a number of students' reports that I've taken snippets and sections out of to give you different ideas of how this goes together. But we will speak on those 2 assignments in more detail as we progress. All right, that covers the material that's in the assignments. I want to go to the lecture notes now, so we'll start with the week 1 lecture, And there's some introductory slides to the course first up. It's just spooling up for the moment. So your lecture notes will come out in this format each week. And because I'm teaching in particular section blocks, I will put lectures 1 and lectures 2 and lectures 3 up over the course of the next week. You've got lecture 1, but you'll get 2 and 3 weeks worth of materials as well. And there's a reason for that, because I'm assessing all of this work at the end of week 3 on the Saturday. And I'll speak on that in the course outline shortly. Okay, a little bit about me. For those new to the university, I've taught in the Civil Engineering School since 2016, full-time since 2017. But my background is that I'm a Fellow of the Institution of Engineers Australia, and I'm a Fellow of the Australian Institute of Building, and I'm also a licensed builder. I have a degree in civil engineering from this institution. I have graduated from the Australian Command and Staff College in the Australian Defence Force as an Army Reservist here in Australia in the Engineer Corps of the Army. And I have Master's Studies in Adult Education, TESOL. I have 3 Master of Engineering Science degrees, which the majority of you will be studying at present. So I have done the structural engineering course, the civil engineering course, and the environmental engineering course. I made that decision after 30 years of being out of the university to come back and renew my education and update my learning, and I did those from 2010 through to 2012. And I have a Master of Construction Project Management from the School of Building here at New NSW, and a graduate diploma in building surveying from Western Sydney University. And like you guys, I'm studying as well to keep ahead of industry change. And I'm doing a Master of Fire Safety Engineering at Western Sydney University, and that's dealing with how we deal with buildings and all the fire services that go into buildings. And I'm also doing a Master of Bushfire Protection in dealing with how we do buildings and egress and evacuation in bushfire circumstances. So I'm mostly through those courses. I would expect to finish those over the course of the next year. And so if I am any example, your learning won't stop just because you're doing a master's degree here at this point in time. As your career changes, so does the learning requirements for you. I have a Certificate 4 in Building and Construction, and for those that have come through an undergraduate degree in civil engineering in particular, if you want to progress and get a builder's license over time, you need to do the Certificate 4 in Building and Construction at a TAFE institution or a private provider for that purpose. I also have the Diploma of Building Construction as well, and I have a Certificate 4 in Training and Assessing, which is a necessity in teaching through the TAFE system, which I've done for many years prior to coming here. All right, my experience goes back to the late 70s. I worked on the M4 motorway with the Department of Main Roads. You guys now know of that in this era as either the Road Maritime Services or its current form, which is Transport New South Wales. I've worked in major supply companies for concrete, cement and lime products. And I've dealt with many of the large and small contractors across the civil engineering and building spectrum. I did over 20 years within the Australian Army. I hold the rank of Lieutenant Colonel, and I was a commanding officer of a combat engineer regiment, and had previously spent 7 years both in combat engineering and 7 years in construction engineering in the construction squadrons and the combat engineering squadrons of the Australian Army Reserve. Okay, I've done recruiting positions as the executive officer within the University of New South Wales Regiment, which is across the road from the main campus on Anzac Parade when you cross at the lights. I served as the Executive Director of ACPAVE, which is the Australasian Concrete Pavement Association. And for those of you that have been travelling a little bit in New South Wales, the RMS, or DMR as it was first known to me, have got a highway system from the border, the Queensland border, down to the Victorian border, which for the most is concrete pavement construction. Okay, I have taught in TAFE for many years. I was full-time between 2005 and 2016, teaching civil engineering and elements of structural engineering as well with that. And yeah, as I said, started here in 2017 full-time. So in the purposes of completing this course, there's some requirements for the course. If there are students that are taking this course as an elective that aren't in the civil engineering school, could I ask you guys to declare yourself by sending me an email? Tell me what school you're in. You might be a mechanical engineer, or you may be an electrical engineer, or you may be from another school completely. I just need to try and find the demography of all of the students, because the words that we use in each of our different parts of the engineering profession may not be fully understood, and if I know where you're from, I can make sure that I don't put abbreviations and acronyms in that you're not going to understand in the first instance. Okay, so you will have had time to read that slide, so that's the assumed knowledge. If you've got any questions, again, send me an email. If it's of a personal nature, but if you want to ask in general terms, put it on the course discussion board and that'll be fine. My rules for the course, communications to the lecturer to be done through the Moodle, okay, through that discussion board with me. Course announcements and updates will be issued through the Moodle as well. They go directly to the Moodle, but they actually go to your email address and are streamed to you as they're released. So everybody gets that. Whether you choose to open your email and read them, that's your choice, but it's as far as the university is concerned, it's a fail-safe system to get you that information. I haven't got an assistant administrator at this stage because the numbers are under 100 students, but so I'll be dealing with all of your concerns. All of your assignments and report submissions will be uploaded onto the Moodle. I will open submission portals for that. The first one for the dot point brief will occur next week, so so everybody will get detail on that. We use at the university a Turnitin tool. It's a check for plagiarism. And for those new to the university at this stage, I need to just explain that a little to you. What it effectively means is we want your ideas in your submissions. We don't want you to copy from others. And what happens is, because this university and many others around the world use the Turnitin session, it allows comparisons to be made with students across the universities that are involved with it. So tens of thousands of submissions, and we can pick up where you've taken wording from different documents from different peoples and the extent of how much copying has taken place. So there's nothing wrong with quotations where you take a direct quotation from an author. The key part to that is you actually declare who had first written that detail. So I don't want your assignments to be filled with quotations. What I want is I want you to give me your interpretation of those events. If there's key words and key phrases that others have used and you want to use those, I have no problem with you putting those words into your assignment. They get put in inverted commas, and they're referred to by whoever made the quotation in the first instance. That's the correct way to include that detail. But mostly what I'm after is you to read those quotations and interpret them, and then write them as you interpret them and applicable to your application or to the assignment or to the focus of the point that you're writing. Okay, assignment and report grades will be communicated to you through the Moodle unless it's stated otherwise. Okay, so that's how the course rules work for this one. Okay, point 6 here says that we will refer to the course outline. I'll do that now, and then I'll come back to these lecture notes again to deal with the rest of the outline after that. So I'll just turn this one back. The course outline you'll find on the Moodle directly under the course announcement. So it's the second top line. Okay, in terms of the course outline, I'm not going to go through every detail in this. You will need to write it, read it in detail, and I'll give you the overview and the key points that I need to describe in it. For all of your courses, you'll probably find the course profile now is not in this format. This being the one of the first postgraduate courses run in the term, and me not knowing where everybody is, there is a new format for the course profiles, and what you will find in them is they will be longer in page length, just the way that they're set out, and they'll generally start in the middle of the front page with a picture. I've yet to finalise my course outlines in that format, but the content of this will remain transferred into that other format. So at this stage, this is the format that you will be given. If I change this course profile for mistakes or otherwise, what you will find in it, as you read the course profile, this has got V1 in its title, it's version 1. What I will do is I will inform you by way of an announcement that I've changed the course profile, and what will happen is you'll get a version 2 being added and version 1 will be taken down. Okay, so if there needs to be any changes to the course profile, there'll only be one operating at any one time, and all students will be advised of those changes. All right, the contact hours for this course are 4 hours per week. We get 3 hours tonight from a lecture for 2 hours from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, followed by the workshop through to 9 o'clock. Now, I've got another online hour discussion with you, and with other class tests and details coming up on Saturdays, that will consume that additional hour up per week, which is effectively another 8 hours that I need to offer you through the course. What I was thinking with some of the students, and once I find out where you are around the world, I can run some other online sessions that aren't at this time. And I'll probably do that on a Friday, maybe a Friday morning, I'm thinking at this stage, or possibly Thursday, whereby if students need some guidance or they want to talk or they want some additional help, that extra 1 hour online detail can be set aside for you on that. I haven't set the time for that, and I'll be guided by your feedback during the week as to how I deal with it. Okay, for those of you that are in Sydney and on campus, if you've got questions, you can come and see me in my office, or you can contact me directly by telephone or otherwise, and I'm happy to talk to you on that detail, or send me an email and we will make a time to meet. I'm happy to deal with that on those bases. All right, the information about the course, I'm not going to read through, it's quite straightforward. I'd ask you, if you haven't read it or not, to take some time after the lecture tonight to follow this detail. The handbook description I have taken directly from the university's handbook, so If you Google up Handbook 2021 for this year, and then type into that handbook CVEN 9742, this handbook description will come up. If you want to find it, if you click on this link or copy and paste that link into your browser, you'll be able to pick that detail up yourself. All right. There's some objectives of the course. I don't really need to go through those. They're quite self-explanatory, and as you see the course schedule, you'll understand what I mean by that as you read through. What I'm wanting and expecting of you guys is to be able to put judgment and analytical thinking to the topics that we're talking about through the course, and how you can deal with creative problem solving. Part of your reflective journal will be talking about your strengths from the studies that you've done elsewhere around the world and the areas that you have worked within industry. And then part of that discussion is what would you need to be doing over the next couple of years to influence what you'll be doing in maybe 5 to 10 years' time. And if I get you thinking in that regard, this line of study that you're doing for master's study is setting you up for where you're going to be in maybe 3 to 5 years' time from now. And after that, what are you going to be doing in the next 5 years after that to set you up for 10 to 15 years' time from now? Okay, and they're big life decisions and life questions that you ask, because there's a whole lot of social questions that come in there. Where are you going to live? Where are you going to be working? Will you be married? Will you have children? Do you choose not to do that? Do you want to be working in remote locations? And these all impact on how your life will unfold, and the planning needs to go into it. Okay. One of the things that I will be expecting from you is the improvement of your communication skills, particularly in terms of this course with your written communication skills and how you source information. The technical learning that you will do in your postgraduate degree at UNSW, or for that matter in other locations and possibly in business studies further down the track, you'll never get questioned on that work and how much you've learnt that, but people will be able to see the evidence with what you're able to perform and do with those areas of technical training. How you're going to perform in the longer term in the community and in the job lines that you do really gets down to how effective your communication skills are. And so for many of you who are from overseas localities, if you are studying here in Australia, I would put it to you that you should also be enrolled in English courses, in spoken English courses, and in written comprehension English courses. And as a TESOL teacher, for the Asian nations in particular, in China, you guys have been taught at a very early age at school very good written English skills, and from what I have seen and know about the teachings in China, the written English skills are very good, but they're less in the oral spoken skills. For students out of Korea, and very much influenced by Vietnam and the Korean Wars, where the Americans have come in there, the pop culture and the emphasis on spoken language in Korea means that those guys generally present better because they've had more experience to it, but they don't write near as well because it's not covered in the schooling. And there's other pockets elsewhere around the world with that differential. But what we need to do is improve for all of you that don't have English as a primary language, is your effective communication in English. Okay, so that's one of my goals as well. It's not effectively written into the course, but the way that I've got the assignment set up, you will see what I mean by that for what you have to answer. All right, you're going to get a number of assigned readings, and you're going to get lectures given to you each week. I want you to follow those through with the assigned readings. They're reflective. You need to think about those in terms of what the workshop questions being answered are, and you can juggle with some of that material in your reflective journal as you're writing that through the year, and no doubt you'll be putting some study in for the questions that you'll be asked in each of the 3 class tests. And there was a mistake in this. There's actually no final examination, so when I do version 2, I'll have to take that set of words out there and put in class tests. So I've missed that one as I've reviewed this. So there we go. All right, the program attributes and in-depth engagement with the relevant disciplinary knowledge and its interdisciplinary context of how we deal with civil engineering and professional civil engineering across the industry. Capacity for analytical and critical thinking and for creative problem solving. An ability to engage independent and reflective learning, so that will come through your journal entries on how you reason with the material that you've been given to study. Information literacy, so how you search and source other materials will be part of that process as well. And how you develop collaborative and other skills in other disciplines that the civil engineering professional practices fit within. And we have to make sure that the work that you're doing is practiced ethically, and you understand the social responsibility you have as an engineer and as a professional engineer. And yeah, the skills for effective communication is another part of the attributes. All right, teaching strategies. I've already covered the lectures and the additional reading materials, and the conduct for the course will be a lecture followed by a workshop on each of the scheduled days. All right, this term, 9742, will be delivered in nominally 2 3-week sessions and 1 2-week session. Okay, and the reason for that is they will be the basis of how the class test will be modelled on those session times. And each will have a separate class test, and they'll be conducted through the term. I've chosen a Saturday to do those tests, and nominally about 10 o'clock to 11:15, so 75-minute test. And it will be broken into parts. You'll probably get some multiple choice questions to do, and then a short break in the middle of the test, and then some written answer questions which you will complete. I'll have more to say on that and have some detail up for the first class test, which will be on the Saturday of week 3, which from memory is the 4th of March. Okay, so this probably being your first course, you're going to be framing that up to get through the first test in the first 3 weeks. So fair bit to do, but a little bit for you to keep focus on. Okay, I've got to change down the bottom here this term date. It should be 2021. The date update is right, but I've missed that change as well, so I'll sort that out with the version 2. Okay, I'll leave the specific teaching and learning strategies. Happy to talk with you and give you guidance on that if any of you are getting flustered on it. But read through that. There's nothing terribly startling in it, but things that you need to reflect on to get the best out of the course, so I'll leave. Okay, we are teaching in these courses to the Engineers Australia Stage 1 competency standards. At the end of this course outline, that full detail is given to you. What I have given you is 4 learning outcomes for this, and I've matched the competencies out of that Stage 1 competency listing for the learning outcomes that I've put for this course. I will be presenting for the course program the lectures And if there's any change to that, if unfortunately I can't make it to class one night, you'll be advised of those changes in expectancy. If I'm not teaching the course, I expect Dr. Carly Barati would be my substitute at this time. Okay. All right. In terms of the lecture recording, it may take a little time for that lecture uploading to occur this week, but I expect after this week, the routines will be that the lecture will be available the next day for you within 24 hours of the lecture being made. So if for any reason you don't make a lecture, you can catch up on the day following. All right, this detail I want to spend some time and actually go through for you. I'll get through it over the next 10 minutes, 10 minutes, I suppose. And after that, I'll close the class down to have a break, and you guys can ask questions at that point. So week one is this week. You'll get an introduction to organisations and management as the lecture material. Your professional standing in the institution of engineers and change management and its impact to construction that we do as civil engineers. I'm going to give you the outline of the assignments, preparing a reflective journal, and we'll go through some of those Mintzberg managerial roles and implementing the organisational change. Okay, week two we do project management role in infrastructure projects, how we formulate a team, selection and the leadership issues with that. I'm going to have you guys do some self-analysis on a Belbin analysis and the Honey and Mumford analysis. I will put the resources up for that, and some of you may want to do it this week, and I'll give you the clear instructions for it. But it tells you what you're good at, what you need to practice at, and what your learning styles are like, and perhaps what parts of the industry with your particular skills and personalities you would be best represented in the industry. Okay, defining the client's expectation is in week three, and then we're going to talk about identifying factors that impact the schedule, the cost, the quality and the sustainability in project delivery. Okay, and you'll see there a sustainability overview in project work is given at the demonstration content, and the class test will be on the Saturday of week three. So it will include weeks 1, weeks 2 and weeks 3 learnings for that. Now I'll have more to say about that class test next week, and I want you to have a practice about uploading your work. So I'll give you an exemplar to do, which will be just a short description about yourself and the course and where you're up to with your study, and allow you to upload that, and as a result you'll then know how to deal with that in the class test on the following week. All right, week 4, and you're going to be dealing with factors on project planning and estimating, and the value management process that we apply to very large engineering jobs, and we're going to deal with the New South Wales documentation of that, and the Treasury of Queensland and the Public Works, Department of Public Works up there, of how to do that. And a requirement of week 4 is you'll put your first assignment in, which is your dot point brief. That will be explained to you tonight in the workshop. Okay, week 5. So week 5, being 4 weeks from now, we'll have got to the census date. So I will have got back to you before week 5 your results for class test 1, and make sure that everybody's on track with the course at that stage. We're going to deal with complex projects and how we deal with multi-disciplinary teams, where we're pulling perhaps civil engineers, environmental engineers, mechanical engineers, scientists and other people together for particular aspects of work, and how we deal with that term and also manage risk within that project team as well. Okay, I'm going to talk about dealing with virtual teams. So a lot of the work since COVID has struck around the world. We're now in the virtual world, in this case learning, but plenty of the issues in engineering will lead to virtual teams being put together. Okay, flexibility week for all courses makes week 6 a non-teaching week. Okay, so that gives you a chance to catch up on the work for other courses that you are doing. Quite clearly there, you'll be writing at this stage your reflective journal, and given that we've done week 1 and week 2 here in the new session, planning for the class test on the Saturday of week 8, you've got some revision to do there. We will do managerial control and the introduction to production control in that week. Okay, I'm going to introduce you to benchmarking in the workshop, and clearly week 4, week 5 and week 7 material will go into the class test 2. Now you'll notice here that I didn't put the class test 2 at the end of week 7, because the end of week 7 is Easter, which is the 4th, I think the Saturday is the 4th of April. So rather than interfere with that time that you will have off, so you'll have all of this week, and then you have the next weekend as a long weekend, because there's no lecture on the public holiday. Your class test number 2 will be at the end of week 8, excuse me. So you have plenty of time to prepare for that. The second last week is week 9. We'll deal with managing personnel, turnover, project impacts, how we commission and complete and hand over a project. And then we're going to deal with personal employment expectancies for you guys. We're going to deal with the work-life balance, okay? And given COVID and given some of you guys will be on an extended time away from your family, having been here last year and now here and not being home, how do we actually get that life balance back into perspective? So I'm going to speak on some of those. And at the end of week 9, you will submit your reflective journal. And the last part is week 10. We'll deal with marketing issues, how you maintain your industry relevance, and then how you deal with disruptive technologies. We're going to deal with sustainability issues in projects, and in the workshop we'll be discussing your professional development beyond your studies here in this degree you're studying now. What happens with disruptive technology? How do you deal with that and be attuned to it? And we're going to talk about sustainability. The class test 3 will only be examining the week 9 material and the week 10 material. Okay, it's still worth the same as the others in terms of value, but it's only dealing with the last 2 weeks worth of work. So given your reflective journals coming in there, you have effectively the learning from week 10 plus week 9 to cover in that last week for the learning. It will also be on the Saturday of week 10. All right, as far as the assessment goes, I'll deal with that after the break. We're just coming up to 5 minutes to 7 right now. We'll have a 10-minute break. That will allow you to get some food or some water or whatever else you want to do and just shaking out for the next hour. I will open up the discussion board, so on the chat, if you guys want to add some extra details here, I'll answer the questions when we come back after the break, and then progress with the learning. So I'll leave this assessment task open. I'm going to turn the microphone off presently, and I'll be back here probably just after 7, but we'll resume the lecture again in 10 minutes, so 7:05. Okay, thank you. Okay, I've just come back online, guys. If you're looking on the chat session, for those of you that weren't here just at 6 o'clock, the 6 yeses that are there, I was just asking the general question, could you hear me and see me online? And I got that response back from those individuals. There's a question that's been written up there. What's the difference between LEC and SEM? Whoever has written that, could you just explain where you've got that from? Because this is part of the problem with the acronyms. There's probably a few different answers that I can give to that, but I just want to know the context you've taken that from. Okay, so that's all the questions I've got so far. I've either answered all your concerns as we've progressed through, but as we get into the second hour, if I haven't answered them, I might get some more questions coming up towards 8 o'clock. All right, the assessment. From everybody's perspective, there's no formal examination at the end of the term for this course. So for those new to the university, what we have is a formal exam period after the lecture times, which in this case is week 10. And under that scenario, there'll be no formal examination for this subject in that time frame. For those of you that are doing other subjects, you may well have formal examinations, but no such detail here. Ordinarily with formal examinations, they generally go for 2 hours. And for people that are running courses, and I've done this in the past with my courses where I've had a 2-hour final examination, I've generally had about a 1 hour to maybe an hour and a half midterm test. So in total, there's around about 3 to 3.5 hours total testing. I've chosen to take that testing and break it into 3 class tests of 75 minutes each. And they'll all be worth the same in terms of their value at 15%, which you can see on the screen at the at this point in the assessment profile. You have 2 other assignments, a dot point brief, which is due in week 4. So you'll have the first class test in week 3. Your dot point brief is due in week 4. Then you've got to do your weekly write-ups of your journals and your learnings, a bit of study, and your next submission times are week 8, week 9, and week 10. So in the middle of the term, for your other courses, it takes the pressure off other assessments and stuff that you were doing by me assessing in this way. All right, you'll see there dot point brief is 20%, the learning journal is 35%. They're markedly different and have different focuses, and the marks are reflective of that. What will happen is I'll aggregate all of your marks, and as a result there, that mark is then put for final grade by the university's mark and grade scale. And your assignment submissions are documents that you can take to interview when you're seeking future employment. In putting through a reflective journal, you're actually writing a report, and how that all goes together with the inclusion of your writing, your set out spacing, any figures and charts that you want to include, and tables will all come into that as well. Okay, in doing a dot point brief, that's a very concise amount of work. As we get to discuss that, it will help you in your employment, because it will help you to learn about different organisations and what you need to know about them when you go for interview. So we'll cover that in a little bit finer discussion shortly. Okay, and so I'm just putting forward there in that middle paragraph above the bold print. Therefore, you should be mindful of the layout and the content you submit for your assignments, as it has application beyond the course delivery. Okay, so that would be covered there. If you perform poorly in any of the assessment tasks, okay, which includes the class tests and it includes your assignments, contact me directly at your first available opportunity, and that should be within the week that you receive that result of that poor performance. And I'll have a talk to you and give you some guidance as to what needs to happen next for your future work. All right, the individual assignment, as I said, is the dot point brief. It allows you to investigate the status of companies and organisations based in Australia and working in the Australian civil engineering profession and construction. And what I'm after is for you to find out a little bit about these organisations. I'll run through the assignment detail in more detail later in the night. What it does, it will give you a whole lot of stuff that you can discover about an organisation that you might have to go for interview with. So instead of turning up there not knowing much about the organisation, you'll be given the tools to investigate that organisation. So when you turn up, you can show that you're genuinely interested in the company that's asked you for that to come to interview. Okay, your reflective journal of your learning. You're each going to produce a reflective journal. The submission shall be due in week 9, and it is to be set out as a report, and each week will be a chapter within that writing. In terms of content, I'm limiting that to 3 pages per week, and that includes pictures and tables and diagrams and other photos that you might want to put in there, in addition to your writing. Okay, so it might seem a lot, but if you've got a regular routine about how to put that together, a little bit each week will work wonders. If you expect to be able to write it all up at the end of week 8 and hand it in at week 9, that's a bad plan. Okay, so be aware of that. I want you to work incrementally through that, and as you come across things in the discussion that you want to deal with, they will be put onto the discussion board, and other people will view that, and it will make them think about how you're seeing that particular problem. They may agree or disagree with you, and that's fine, and their journals will reflect on some of those points of view as well. What I want is a logically constructed reflective journal. I don't want you to tell me all the stuff that you learnt in the lesson. I want you to tell me how the stuff that you learnt in the lesson will impact upon you. So it's a bit different perspective of assessing that. The class test will outline to me what you've learnt in the lesson, but the reflective journal is about how that information will impact upon you and your professional career. All right, it's a substantial document, and it will produce, for anybody that sees this, your ability to produce a coherent written report which has all sorts of supporting information, which in its total content is self-reflective of where you stand with your learning for this subject material. Okay, last element is the 3 class tests. I've themed those on A, B and C, as you'll read in the course outline. Okay, that's taken from the previous table that we've been through. And class test 1 will cover the workshop material and the lecture material in weeks 1, 2 and 3. 4, 5 and 7 will be in class test 2, and weeks 9 and 10 will be in class test 3. And those dates are the Saturday dates there. If you have any concerns, I'm happy to take an email from you over those issues, and I'll deal with individuals with concerns on that on a one-on-one basis. Your class test will be conducted as open book examinations, which means all the materials that you get and all the materials that you summarise and study can be used to support you with that test. Last year, what I did with the test is I had some multiple choice questions in each test, and I I think the way that I did 15 questions, randomised questions in 15 minutes, and then we had a 10-minute break between the test, and then what I gave you was another hour to do some written answer questions, which you did in handwriting, and you uploaded onto the Moodle. So as I said in the first hour, I want to give you an exemplar for that to be able to write and upload your work to know that you're putting those submissions in correctly, because there's a limited time that you'll be able to do that on the test itself. What I will also do for each of those tests is prepare a pro forma that you can download and print, and you can write your answers onto that pro forma, and they will be page numbered, and it will minimise your work on the day in setting up the pages. You print out the pro forma before you start the test. I will have given to you in advance how the test cover sheet rules will work, so you'll know all that out in advance. So when the test opens up on the Saturday, you just take the test and you've got all that other work behind you because you've had that in advance. So that should work pretty well for all of us, and we'll run from there. Okay. Okay, you need to summarise your learnings weekly. Part of that will go into the reflective journal, but you need to also prepare for those class tests in those summaries. Some of the detail you will remember, and some of the detail you'll need to write out, and because different people have different learnings and perspectives about this. Your assignments to be uploaded onto the Moodle into select portals. I will have the Dot Point Brief portal opened next week for you, and that can be put in at any stage before then. And the class tests will be uploaded into a separate portal for each class test, and you'll be given the instructions for that. A little bit about scaling. I've never had to do this, but if there is a requirement for scaling, I have to get that agreed to by the head of the school. And the last part with this is it doesn't affect you guys because there's no final examination, but there are supplementary exams for the students that are granted one. If you perform poorly in an examination and you have reason why you perform poorly, or other reasons that the school may choose to give you a supplementary exam, they will be held between the dates of Monday the 24th of May and Friday the 28th of May. You need to be available for that. So your results will come out before that time, earlier in May, and consequently you'll then be advised if you've got a supplementary exam, you need to be available for those dates to do so. So I know your diaries aren't full in regards to the University of New South Wales requirements at this stage, so you might put that in your diaries at this stage of when they take place. All right, penalties for late submissions for your assignments. Okay, there's a 10% deduction per day for late submissions for your assignments. I will accept assignments up to 5 days late. After that, unless there's a very valid reason for it, you will not be able to submit your assignments and receive a mark. So be aware of that. If any of you have got circumstances that will prevent you from submitting assignments by those due dates, you need to communicate to me directly in the first instance, and also the university through the student services through the engineering centre, that you need special consideration for a late submission for that work. And I'm happy to talk through anybody that's got hardship, whether that be of a personal nature in terms of injury, or whether it be some other issues in terms of impacts happening in their life at that point of time with family or otherwise. Happy to talk to you on that. Phone calls or emails will start that conversation off, and we'll deal with that as we need to. All right, here is the assessment overview. I have given to you all of the explanations that will be required. So I've covered the dot point. In terms of its length, it has a specific 3-page limit. Okay, the reflective journal is nominally 4,500 words as a maximum. Over 9 weeks, that's about 500 words. You know, you'll easily get 500 words onto 3 pages, but the 3 pages will count for the 500 words. If you have pictures and details, graphs and charts and other things, I will include that as part of the nominal 500 words. You may find that in some weeks that you will only write less than 500 words. That's fine. I'm not expecting you to write 50 words, but you might write 250 or 300 words only in some weeks, and then on another week you might write maybe 600 words. So there is variation on that, roughly about 4,500. But if you look at the page count for that, you're going to be dealing with maximum of 3 pages per week times 9. It's about 27 pages. So somewhere between 25 and 30 pages would be what I'd be expecting for your reflective journal on its upload. Okay, the submission deadlines are given to you there. The absolute fail deadlines are given. That's 5 days after the due date for the submissions. And I will be returning your marks in each case for those within 2 weeks of your submission upload. Yeah, so I've got an obligation for that with you. In terms of the class tests, I would be hoping to get the class test back to you with about 80 students in the class within the week. I have an allowance for 2 weeks for that, but I'll be trying to get that back to you within the week. Okay, so and maybe on the first weekend, which is the 6th of March, I'll mark those Saturday afternoon and Sunday, and you may get those back by Monday night. So who knows? We'll see how we go. And so that goes on. All right, so the class tests nominally at this stage, and this will be dependent upon where people are around the world, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. on local time here. And through the course, we will swap from daylight saving time at the end of March back to Eastern Standard Time. But there'll be no changes, whatever the time is locally in Sydney, they will be the time. So for you, those of you overseas, you'll need to keep that in consideration. Okay, that covers those details. Last page in the course outline is there's no relevant resources and text for this course, so I will provide all those resources to you. You are at liberty to source other material and other perspectives in your learning, and that may come out in your reflective journal of how you might get supporting documentation or form opinions from other things that you've read or understand or seen in other videos, and I'm happy to take that. You will reference that into your writings. The important dates I've given to you there. There's a detail on plagiarism. For students new to the University of New South Wales with your postgraduate studies, plagiarism is where you take other people's ideas and content and you don't acknowledge that in the writings that you are putting forward as being their thoughts and considerations or outcomes. If you are going to use the opinions of others, there's 2 ways that you do it. You can use it in quotation marks and do a direct quote, and you should acknowledge who actually made that claim or that statement using the Harvard reference system where you've sourced that material. But the other way that you can do it is that you can use somebody else's words and particularly in your reflective writing, put the response back of how that impacts upon you. okay? And you may agree or disagree with how that author has framed that statement, and you give your reasons for that. So you're not quoting it directly, you are using the concepts delivered to you by others' thoughts and outcomes and research, and you are reflecting on that information, and then you explain why you agree or you disagree with that. But the principal part with the plagiarism is that the university uses a Turnitin response. The Turnitin response allows this university and many others around the world to draw on a large amount of literature, of which, when you start to take quotations in bulk out of other journals and books and elsewhere, that data bank of information will come up as I'm doing the marking of where those comments have been previously written. And if they come up that they've been written and you haven't acknowledged it, that is what's regarded as the plagiarism. Again, I'm happy to talk with you if you don't fully understand that. Yeah, there's probably not much more that I can say at this stage, but make sure you understand it. It's the same in other courses. So if you do plagiarism in one course, I expect you're probably doing plagiarism in your other courses, and that's going to be a bit diabolical for you in terms of your performance. So you've been given the warning on it. I don't want you to do that plagiarism problem. Okay, if you seek academic advice, I have commented that at the beginning of the first lecture. There's a whole way that you can get support through the university for that, and I am happy to give you the details as well. You'll see here on the slide it refers to SEVSOC, SERVSOC and SEPCA. SEVSOC is the Civil and Environmental Engineering Society. They're the undergraduate student society. SERVSOC is the Survey Society, and SEPCA is the postgraduate society for you guys that you will join. All right, so if you haven't heard of SEPCA before, they will be active over the next couple of weeks for the new students to give you welcome and otherwise to the university. Okay, I'll go backwards now and get back into the lecture material because I want to start that content. There's a fair bit to get through on those lecture notes. So travelling down here. Okay, week 1 lecture. We were through to, I think, about page 6 with this. Yep, so we did the course outline. 3 essential items, the dot point brief, reflective journal and class test, we've covered that. Okay, what I expect from you guys, do attend the lectures and be on time. I'll be starting the lecture each week at 6:05. You've got the format already. We'll run for around about 50 minutes at a time. Have a short break between those to shake out, get something to eat, to relieve yourself and other things, and then come back into the lecture material. Complete your workshop learning elements that follow each lecture. Ask questions on the Moodle. Plan your individual assignment, which is your dot point brief, and complete the incremental update of your reflective journal regularly. That's probably the key part for you. I've put this up for a number of years. Some of the students will have seen this last year, but when I did my Master of Construction Project Management program in 2014, a lecturer, TED Tour, talked about general statistics about students in learning, in postgraduate learning. For you guys, for the majority of you, you're between 20 and 30 years old. I was a bit older when I did mine, but you're entering a master's program. Your first degree has been in engineering surveying or another science discipline, I would expect. You've been studying for around about 20 years of your life. Okay, your net invested human capital with that learning through family and through institutions would be valued now at about $5 million. Okay, you will live to 95 given the extended life that's coming through medicines and other capacities within our society. You'll probably have between 15 and 20 jobs. That will include your part-time jobs and some of those that you're doing now. And you'll probably have up to 5 different career paths. The idea of one person, one job for life is probably a misnomer around the world now. For students, this may be your second or third country that you've lived and studied in. But for the others that haven't travelled outside of Australia at this time, it's likely that you will work in other countries around the world, nominally 5. Okay, and I think for those students that have travelled to Australia or doing courses in Australia currently, you can easily see that that you'll be in at least 3 countries by the time you enter the workforce in this current environment. Some good news or bad news, however you choose to take it, you'll never properly retire, but you may cease paid work at around about 75 years of age. You will see, as normal, space travel, quantum computing, 3D printing is starting to take place in our industry. You'll have robots smarter than you, and you're going to be in a challenging world managing a climate change of more than 2 degrees. Okay, given where Australia is and given the oceans around us, huge population of around about 4 billion, and I'll call it in this grouping of Chindia. Okay, no such thing, but you can imagine where I'm referring to, and we're going to be situated right in the middle of that area. Okay, and what do I see at the moment? Many, many students that come from overseas countries with other languages, so you're going to be dealing with multilingual people in your future workforce. And unlike me, who is an English-only speaking person, you will be dealing with people with multiple languages, okay, and probably more than 2 in many cases as you progress throughout your working lifetime. Okay, you will be one of 100,000 people who will graduate this year with a similar qualification, okay? So if you're not graduating this year, same statistic, it's just next year. Okay, so my point to you is, do you want to be one in the 100,000 that's just recognised for their greatness, or do you want to be just one of the 9 billion people that has just existed? So for you to be doing master's studies, you need to think about these sorts of big questions. These may come in to your reflective journal. These might be underlying themes that you want to write about. So why are you here? Why did you select CVEN 9742? Why did you select the environmental subjects? Okay, yes, if you're doing the Master of Engineering program, you have to do core subjects to meet the requirements for the Engineers Australia registration. But there's other courses that you have selected. Why have you gone in that direction? So these are the big pictures of life about you that you can reflect in your writing. Okay, how will this course add value to your life? Okay, how do the other courses that you're doing add value to your life as well? All right, so enough of the philosophy issues. Let's get down to the first lecture. It's now just going 7:31. I will go through to somewhere around 8 o'clock. So we're about a third of the way through, so I think there'll be about 30 slides in this package all up. I'll skim to the back. Yeah, 33 slides, and we'll start at slide number 11 again. And I want to try and get through these set of slides by around about 8:15, maybe 8:20, then get to the workshop and your assignment, which is the dot point brief and your reflective journal. Okay, so first one is about organisations and management. What makes up a contemporary workplace today? Okay, now some of you guys will have worked, some of you will be working part-time, either here or have worked part-time overseas. But the macro view in the contemporary workplace today, and COVID has accelerated this, we are more globally connected through technology because of the COVID world pandemic. The workplace is interdependent upon that global connection. So part of the things that you will find is that you'll be working in some assignment groups and you'll be dealing with students that are overseas. That will be no different in the workforce that you enter into in the future. Okay, and with that comes the flow of resources, access to different product markets around the world, and you're going to find that you're going to have different clients and different competitors because of this globalization on a macro view. All right, technology, the computer age with industry-specific programs. I can tell you right now, because as a profession, we can't meet for training. Institution of Engineers has online programs for specific industry upgrades and details. Some of them you pay for, some of them are for free. So the computer age and the pandemic has accelerated this, allows you to deal with getting huge amounts of information and access to information that previously we weren't able to deal with. But if you think about the programs of how that technology works, we've got computers, we have the internet. You guys using the internet have more information right now and today than ever I have been able to access through my lifetime before the internet existed. And if you think about it, the internet's only been around for around about 20 odd years. We have teleconferencing. Okay, this is a good example of that. We've got Teams detail, we've got virtual hard drives, and we've got virtual lectures taking place across all of your learning. Electronic businesses are the flows out of that, and electronic e-government comes out of that as well. And if we want to go back to our profession, we have building information systems as well, which is quite applicable to the civil engineering profession in its design and its construction processes, and how we automate those design and construction processes together using building information systems. Okay, if we look at the workplace, the real estate footprint is constantly under review and downsizing. It's actually been accelerated with COVID, okay, because we've got many people now that are working from home. Do they need to go into the office? I'm going to put this to you, and you might think about this for your journal. I tend to come to work every day. And the reason I do that is I separate home life from work life, and I'm in a position where I can do that in an individual office. Okay, but if you've been working from home and studying from home, it's easy to get distracted. But I will say to you now, and this is a really important point, you need to keep your routines. Okay, so if you get up at 7:30 in the morning and you have breakfast, you continue to do that. Okay, normally you would get up, have breakfast, and you'd be going off to work or off to university or elsewhere. So don't get up and have breakfast in your pajamas. Actually make the purpose to actually get changed and keep those routines in your life. If you go for a walk or a run, or you do exercise, or you have an established learning platform, wherever possible, keep to those routines, because it's the routines that actually gets all of the learning done for you. It's too easy to slip into a non-routine pattern, and what you find when you jump into a non-routine pattern, so goes your concentration, and so goes your level of interest. All right, so the real estate of organisations and their offices is constantly downsizing as we increase this technology platform. Casualisation of the workforce reduces full-time staff members. Okay, and that's going to be an increasingly bigger problem for civil engineering in particular here in Australia. We generally don't have enough civil engineers in this country, and we've always imported engineers into the country. Now, for you guys studying here at the moment, and the industry with the amount of infrastructure going on, and the lack of people who can actually enter the country at this point in time from overseas, you're actually in a very interesting time, that the only way that the industry can source new people is through the people going through the university system. So it presents for you a good opportunity for employment, and better than what had been happening before the COVID had existed. So be aware of that, and I'll talk to you about writing job applications and other things in future weeks. All right, full-time staff become the holders of the core knowledge within the organisation. Okay, so casual people leaving the organisation won't hold that organisation's core knowledge and key understandings. And the increase in employment in part-time workers and contracted workers is a norm that I'm seeing happening within industry in general at this stage. Okay, other things. What is the people mix? Okay, Australia has a really wide, diverse population with respect to race, ethnicity, and religious affiliation. That's one of the things that sets us apart from around the world. Diversity and age basis. Is there a preference for the age and the experience issues with people? There's gender issues that come up, sexual orientation, and all of these points are currently in the media at this point in time. For people that are injured or have birth defects, there's workplace accessibility issues. Okay, the glass ceiling is to how people will progress through an organisation and how they move from junior management to middle management to senior management through the organisation. And then there's other issues that come up with prejudice and discrimination in any newspaper that you want to read about on a daily basis, whether it's here or around the world. You'll find some of those diversity and diversity bias issues coming up time and time again. Okay, and you may have an issue about how some of those impact about yourself. Okay, so if that's the case, how do you get around it? What are the things that you can possibly put in place to protect yourself from that, from those biases? Okay, ethical issues. Okay, within organisations in Australia, the expectancy is for everybody in every part of industry is they go to work without injury, and the expectation is they come home to their place of residence without injury. Particularly when we get into construction operations, that would probably tend to be more injury prone as a profession than perhaps working in an office. So the issues are what are the work health and safety aspects that have been put in place by the senior management at the locality, and how is that training, and how is that enhanced all the way through the workforce down to the people doing the jobs. Okay, the environmental position we have as a society in terms of what we produce and what waste we produce, and more so, and you'll get this in your environmental studies, how much do we transfer intergenerationally? Okay, if I look at my generation and my parents' generation, huge amounts of waste that have been generated, which have got to be cleaned up. And who's got the job of cleaning up? Okay, your generation, for the things that have gone wrong in the environment as it stands. So this intergenerational transfer of waste and excess has to be reduced, and organisations now have to take an environmental position of how they do their work diligently and minimise the impact on the environment with the things that they do. Okay, basis for equal opportunity across the organisation. Everybody who has merit should be able to progress through the organisation. Okay, and there may be lines of training that you have to do and thresholds that you have to cross in terms of your experience and learning that you have to undertake, but it should be open and equally accessible for all people in the organisation to do. However, in defence of the organisations, for people who have injuries, okay, or for people who have medical conditions, there may be some jobs that they can't do. Physically, they are not up to the standard to do it, and they either endanger themselves or by their action in going into that job, they endanger others. They need to be precluded from that. Okay, so unless there's a particular medical reason or a particular functional reason, what I'm saying here is the equal opportunity for all individuals within an organisation should exist if they can progress. Okay, dealing with theft and corruption. Okay, theft and corruption really, if it's seen in an organisation, what happens in the organisation is the trust that the individuals have within the organisation of one another is belittled, and as a result what we will get is a declining work morale in the organisation. And so in dealing with theft and corruption issues, these are very much ethical issues that have got to be addressed in the workplace, because if it's not done, what will happen is the people working in the venue will lose confidence in the organisation and its management, and they will vote with their feet. They will leave the organisation ultimately, and the organisation will suffer. Okay, organisational training and development. The ethical issues there is we want people to progress and learn. So there's an obligation with the organisation for you to be better trained and to be developed and your skills be developed. I have no doubt that some of you, as students at the university doing your master's degree, will be able to, because of your employment lines, you've got an agreement with your organisation that the organisation will pay in part or full for your master's studies on the completion of your courses when you bring the results in. Okay, so that's one way that the organisation is able to put money in your development. They are developing you, but they're developing you for a particular reason that you can contribute back to the organisation long term. Okay, and if we've got these ethical issues in place, these make for the great reasons why you would want to stay and work within an organisation. Okay, and as you get into the senior management areas, think and reflect back on these ethical issues, because your staff underneath you will be expecting that you will be performing each of these elements well, and you will get the respect, and you'll have a great culture within your organisation if these are being addressed properly. Okay, organisations and management. What I've given to you here is a slide. It's been taken from Management by Robbins, Bergman, Stagg and Coulter. Okay, and traditional organisations and what we have as a contemporary organisation in this mindset. One of the things that you might do in your reflective journal is make some observations of where you work or where you work part-time, about how that goes, and how has that changed perhaps with COVID coming into play. What has changed in the organisations? For instance, there's a lot more rules being put into place with COVID and how the place organises and how you deal with customers. So there are some of the things that come into the organisational culture with a pandemic that's across the world at this point. Okay, work days. Do we have a 9-to-5 work day? Okay, contemporary organisation has no time boundaries. Is that good or is that bad? Okay, so what is your time? What is company time? What is work time? How does that deal with your headspace in terms of where you're at? I've told you my point, in that for the majority of times I come to work to do my work, and at home I'm not doing work online near as much, and I have a really clear separation of routine and details for that. And they become important to you because you can't just do work all the time. You actually have to work and have that downtime to get your sanity back as well. And likewise, you'll have peak periods when you're studying through this term, and you're going to have other periods of time where you haven't got near the amount of accountability with your assignment submissions and the like. And so for this week in particular, and from this course, you should be able to plan out a study and professional student learning program for yourself as part of this detail. All right, next. The tradition has seen three types of civil engineering organisations emerge. We have a principal, who might be the owner, who employed maintenance staff and certifiers such as the clerk of works and other people. We have civil and constructional consulting firms, and then we have the construction companies associated with civil engineering. Okay, for those of you, if I said to you, how would you explain civil engineering to maybe a 5-year-old child? Okay, really good challenge, that one. How do you make a 5-year-old child understand what you do as a job? Okay, or for that matter, it may be somebody that's not associated with the engineering profession at all. So if I was to explain civil engineering, I would put it concisely as being the design and the construction of elements within society that stay still. So it would include dams and roads, tunnels, water treatment plants, sewer treatment plants. It would include some buildings but not houses, because that's the building industry. And so you could explain that to a 5-year-old because they understand what a bridge is, they understand what a tunnel is, and we design and we build those. Okay, so it's actually working with your audience of how those understandings come through. But I see three principal elements there. The principal owner, if you think about the infrastructure in Australia, okay, it's either privately owned or it's owned by government, and they employ maintenance staff and certifiers for that. Or it could be a local council, and they employ engineers and other things to maintain and certify work as well. Then we've got the consulting firms associated with the civil and structural engineering, and then we have, along with the building profession, civil engineering construction companies as well to build that and maintain those projects. Okay, organisational fundamentals. Okay, an organisation is a deliberate arrangement of people to achieve a specific purpose. Okay, can we have it in engineering? We certainly can. It could be project specific to deliver a tunnel, a bridge, a building, and so on. The characteristics, there's three of them. The organisation has a distinct purpose. The organisation consists of people to do that purpose, and the organisation develop deliberate structures to actually roll out that output. The organisations will change over time to maintain relevancy because the world around them changes and continues to do so. So this is the contemporary world we're talking on. Successful organisations evolve as new societal, global and economic and technological norms that require them to embrace new methods. If I look at the impact of COVID and some of the restaurants that have been really impacted by that, what are they doing and how do they evolve? Okay, some of them are doing a lot more takeaway meals now. They're not doing the same that they were doing with an audience and patrons that could come to their office. They've actually changed their whole mode of operandi to still be able to get food out of their business, because that's what makes them their money and that is their business, but they're now doing it in an entirely different way. Okay, so this is really bold face in terms of the COVID, but you can see the exemplars that I'm trying to provide for you there. Okay, in civil engineering, what happens is the technology that one organisation uses is only one job in front of the rest of the industry, being able to pick up on how they've gone about doing that change in view. Okay, so when a new piece of equipment comes out, the person that adopts it first and makes a success of it will change the way that the industry deals with that, because there'll either be cheaper production methods or more efficient methods, or be able to complete the work to a much tighter time frame, and other professionals within the industry will take advantage of that new knowledge and adapt their practices to include those changes that have been outlined to them. Okay, so remember that you're only one job ahead of the rest of the industry as you implement change. Okay, the really smart people can get copyright issues on that and patents, and they allow other people to use those copyrighted designs or patents, but they get a royalty system from that. Okay, so if you've got technologies that you want to keep in hand, you put the patents in place, and then if the rest of the industry wants to use it, you can license that out, okay, and get a fee for service for that. Okay, if we talk about managers, the traditional view of managers is they were organisational members that told others what to do and how to do it. They told those to do the work and were the managerial employees of those people doing the work. The contemporary view of managers in this day and age, there's blurred lines of distinction now. Many non-managerial jobs include managerial activities. Okay, so if I look at my job as a lecturer and the work that I have put to you earlier today, I have a responsibility. I feel I have a responsibility not to just teach you directly. I've got a direct input as to how you manage your career and your learning through the university, and if there's any problems there, how I can help you with that. So there's blurred lines on that, and you will have that same responsibility as you progress with your work in industry when others are reporting through you. You have to look after them, and you have the obligation to train and develop them as well. Okay, today a manager is someone who coordinates and oversees the work of other people so that the organisational goals can be accomplished. So we're looking not so much at the individual, we are now looking at the organisation of how it completes its mission or its requirements or its goals, and how those people adapt to performing those goals. Okay, we've had a descending pyramid of management, top managers, middle managers and first line managers. To explain that, the top managers are responsible for making organisation-wide decisions and establishing the plans and the goals that affect the whole organisation. So the sorts of people that would include would be the managing director of a company. They won't be necessarily involved with the day-to-day operations, but they will be setting up who they're going to contract with and who they're going to work for with, and where the organisation is going in terms of the staffing, where it's going to in terms of maybe the equipment and the methods that they've got, education, the financing of the organisation, and where the vision is for the company to be here in the next year, 5 years' time, 15 years' time from there. The middle managers, they manage the frontline managers, in other words, the work that is done that the business makes its money from. So we might have divisions such as regional managers, might be a head of a department, it could be a project leader, it might be a store manager, it could be the dean of a faculty in the university sector, and it could be a division manager. They're the sorts of people that that would impact upon. And the first line managers, these are the lowest level of management that manage the work of the non-managerial employees who are directly involved in producing the organisation's products or services. So if we were in the business of delivering concrete, the concrete is delivered by a concrete truck driver, it's manufactured by the plant operators, and the first line managers might be the person who heads up that production plant, or it might be an area manager that looks after a cluster of concrete plants manufacturing products for that. Okay, so the sorts of things that would come in there might be supervisors, shift managers, office managers, team leaders, a four-person or a four-man, as it was previously known, in terms of how that comes together. That's pretty easily understood, and beneath them are the people that actually perform the tasks, the skilled workers. Okay, what do managers do? Okay, they involve the coordinating and overseeing of the work activities of others. Their coordinating and overseeing the work of others is what distinguishes a managerial position from a non-managerial role. So that's an important point. So the difference is there that they're overseeing the work that others do. Managers ensure that activities are completed efficiently and effectively by those assigned to the task. So let's talk about efficiency. It's often referred to as doing things right. Okay, so if we're going to place the concrete on a job, it has to be compacted, it has to be well surface finished, and it has to be to the right level in terms of survey requirements. So doing things right makes the job correct at the end. Okay, so it's about getting the output for the least amount of inputs. So doing things right means that we haven't got to do rework. We actually do it right in the first instance, so that we don't have to uproot our previous work and relay it or redo it again. So the inputs going into that are people, money, and equipment, and it's about the efficient use of each of those. So we do things right. Effectively, we do it once, and we do it properly. Okay, effectiveness is about doing the right things. Okay, completing the work activities that will help the organisation to reach its goals and its targets. Okay, so have we got the right people on site when we're going to do this work? Have we got the right resources? Have we done the appropriate planning for that work? Okay, and if we summarise this, we're looking at as efficiency is concerned as the means of getting things done, and effectiveness is about concerned with those goals of the organisation. Okay, and it is easier to be effective if the efficiency aspect is ignored. Okay, and there's examples that can be put up for those. So can organisations be effective? Be efficient but not effective? And the answer to that is yes, they can, by doing wrong things really well. Okay, so the issue is they may be placing the concrete on a job really well with a compactive effort, but they're not taking into consideration the survey and the level that concrete goes in. And in effect, what they do is they really place well compacted concrete at the wrong level. Okay, and you can see there with what I'm describing, they're doing all the right things, but they're doing wrong things as well by that process. Okay, it's just coming to 8 o'clock, so we'll have a 10-minute break at this stage. If students have got any further questions, I might cut it back to 5 minutes, guys, at this stage. If you've got any questions, add them to the discussion board. I'll deal with them in 5 minutes' time, and then we'll get into the lecture. I'm halfway through the lecture material now, and I've got about another 10 slides to get through for you. So I'll push that through over the next 20 minutes, and then we'll get into the workshop and your assessment tasks. Okay, let's take a break. I'll turn the microphone off and the camera. For those that want to get something to eat or drink or other, do so, and I'll see you back here at about 7 minutes past 8. All right, guys, we'll press on with this. Okay, next few slides come up with management functions. The French industrialist Henry Fayol proposed that all managers perform 5 functions. You'll see those listed at the bottom of the page. So this is probably no different to most engineering work. If you think about with the assignments that you guys do, you follow actually through this as well. You plan your assignment, you organise the resources that you need to do your assignments, you make a set of decisions, which are command decisions, about what you're going to do, and then you work in around all the other things in your program, the coordinating work for that, and then the reviewing of your work and the controlling of getting the submissions in at the due date and time. You do all of those functions. To me, commanding is a really interesting decision. We talk about in the military commanders, but in business we tend to talk about leadership. Okay, and command to me has a very distinct purpose. It's actually a decision made by an individual to impact upon the organisation. And as a commanding officer with an engineering regiment that I have a few responsibilities. I've got the government or the Commonwealth of Australia's assets to look after. I have a number of soldiers that I have to make sure that are being put into a position to sustain their life and well-being. And then the other issue there is I've got requirements in perhaps a theatre of war where I've got to perform tasks, and I've got to achieve the outcome, which is the task, but I've got to command the whole scenario. And with that is key and critical decisions. I can seek guidance from others in arriving at those decisions, but ultimately, as the commander of the unit, I have to make those decisions as an individual detail. That tends not to be the case in business. We have a lot of team leadership and team decisions that come out, okay, without the necessity of having a commander or a single person make those decisions. Okay, contemporary business theory has reduced those 5 points down to 4. So we've got planning, organising, leading and controlling. Okay, so what's been dropped out? Okay, it's the coordinating detail, and the leading is not so much command now. Okay, so we're talking about the individual and the organisational goals. Okay, so I'm not going to go through that in any further detail. You can reflect on that. And I've said at the bottom, in this day and age, how a manager implements and functions is by individual choice and preference. Okay. Okay, Henry Mintzberg studied actual managers by looking at the roles that they play at work. Okay, the term management roles refers to specific actions or behaviours exhibited by a manager or expected of that manager. And if we think about this, by example, all of us play different roles in how we interact with others and the things that we do. For instance, we may be a brother or have a brother and sister relationship. We'll have a different set of roles being played out managerially as an employee, likewise as a different again as a student. If we're a team member in a workplace, okay, or if we're doing volunteer work, okay, and you could add into that your relationship with your parents as a child of and a parent relationship. It's equally valid in terms of how those roles in management in day-to-day life work. Mintzberg identified 10 management roles in 3 groupings. Okay, so the 3 groupings were interpersonal, informational, and decisional. And then the interpersonal ones, he broke that down into figurehead, leader, and liaison peoples, okay, and the informational detail was monitor, disseminator, and spokesperson, and the decisional ones are entrepreneurs, disturbance handlers, resource allocators, and the negotiators, okay, and a description is given for you for each of those under Mintzberg's managerial roles, and I've left there some details of where you might be able to identify examples of each of where these peoples might be in industry and in life. Okay, so interpersonal roles. Managerial roles involve people and other duties that are ceremonial or symbolic in nature. Okay. Informational roles, where we have the receiving and collecting and dissemination of information. Okay, that makes sense. And decisional roles that revolve about making decisions, and very much with the building and construction industry, there's a lot of people in decisional roles, and equally where we're trying to put perhaps some information out about the environment or how we're dealing with the broader community, we will involve people from the informational roles as well. And with that, we might have publicity officers, other than perhaps people out of the engineering position that far better handle that dissemination of information. Okay. Okay, as you can see, a manager's job is really complex. Okay. Another researcher, Katz, found that managers need 3 essential skills or competencies. They need technical skills, and that's one of the issues that you are picking up in doing this master's course. You're picking up key knowledges and technical know-how. And when you get to industry, you're not going to be examined on that. It will be expected that you can do the work for the knowledge that you have learnt. Okay, there are human skills. So that's the ability to work well and communicate with others, individually and in a group situation. So that's an experiential learning aspect that you will pick up in the workforce and relating to other people. And conceptual skills is to be able to think and conceptualize about abstract and complex situations. And these become important when you're starting to deal with multidisciplinary tasks that require not only engineers, but it needs people that can manage the media. It needs people that can work and function with safety aspects of the community. It might be in terms of what is the legacy that we're going to leave community by the things that we do. In the process that we are doing, are we creating harm on the way through to society in terms of maybe pollution or excess resources or energies being taken? So these are the sorts of things that come into play that might be reflected through the media as bad practices in industry, and those conceptual skills and being able to manage those are really important at the upper levels of management. And many civil engineers progress to the tops of organisations to do that. Part of the reason is that in civil engineering you are taught to think, and you are taught to think deeply and conceptually with a lot of the work that you do. Okay, why implement organisational change? Okay, COVID in terms of how community is operating is probably a really good example of this. We may have circumstances externally impacting on our lives within business, or we may be in a business reduced in the amount of resources that we've given, and we have to find a new way to have that business operate. So consequently, these impacts deeply impact the organisation, and it's how well that organisation is able to adjust and how quickly that organisation is able to adjust determines whether it succeeds or fails miserably. Okay. The other thing is there, and in this technology driven world that engineering is at. I said you're only one job ahead of the rest of the industry with the new practices that you put into play. And so the second dot point on the page there on 27 reads that organisations are constantly reviewing their operations in order to become more innovative in a competitive environment. Okay, so if somebody steals the march in industry and envelops a new practice which is either more efficient, quicker, or is more streamlined, both financially and maybe operationally, the industry will follow that lead quite quickly. Okay, so with that comes impacts of forces of change. We have internal and external forces of change. So acting on an organisation, the external forces of change would be changes in the marketplace, maybe new government laws and regulations being brought into play, changing technology, okay, labour market changes. Do we have the same labour market? Do those skills still exist? If they don't exist, how do we adapt our industry to cope with those changes? Okay, and there may be economic changes. And I could probably put in here as an external change, pandemics. Okay, there's another one for you that's not there at the moment. Okay, internal changes within an organisation is the organisation may regroup, change its strategy and how it does its business, and with that it becomes a new organisational strategy being implemented for that business operation. With that will probably come a change in focus of how they do business. Changing composition of the workforce. So if we change direction in the organisation and we want to now produce blue widgets instead of red widgets, okay, we may have to change those widgets being produced by a different type of workforce. So our employment will change as a result of the change of internal strategy needed. Okay, if we buy new equipment, okay, there's no external changes to that. The equipment's now owned by the organisation. If we do that, we will change our practices, we'll change our training, and we'll change maybe the types of employees that we need to operate that new equipment efficiently. Okay, and the last one, and this is an important one, is changing employee attitudes. Okay, so if our headspace is not right and the organisational management's not right, what's going to happen is the employee efficiency and the willingness of people to come to work at that organisation will diminish, and so will the attitudes, and so the organisation will spiral downwards. If we have management in the organisation which is forthright, it's treating employees equally, it's implementing new changes and it's developing its employees, what's going to happen is the employee attitudes will reflect that, and the organisation, by all accounts, should succeed if they're doing the right things and they're not doing the wrong things. Okay, so organisational change is about alterations in people, structure, technology in the organisation, and the change agent is someone who acts as the catalyst and assumes the responsibility for managing the process of change. So for students that are in strife going through, if they came to me, the organisational change is coming about with me being the change agent to help that person succeed in their studies, manage their life, manage their study habits and details, and as a consequence there, they then are able to progress. Okay, all right, let's look at change management and its impact on construction. There's three types of change: structure, technology, and people. Okay, really easy to understand for our industry. The structure is about the work specialisation, how we departmentalise different types of work. So you might be an expert in construction for pile driving and excavation work, okay, and there may be others in the organisation who are expert on formwork, scaffolding and concreting. Okay, the structure of the reporting relationship, who is in the chain of command and what authorities do they have. Span of control, so in other words, for a manager, what are they actually looking after and what are they managing and what can they influence? Do we have centralisation or decentralisation with our people in the workplace? So we might have centralisation in the estimating department in an office where we want all those people together and contributing in a team, but we want to decentralise when we're actually in the construction phases, because we don't necessarily concrete when we're doing maybe drilling operations for foundation work. There may be circumstances where they come together, such as if we have a high water table and we are actually drilling and we're placing concrete in an underwater scenario. We may have to bring those two processes together under a centralised command structure. Okay, job redesign, okay, and the actual structure design for the project that we're doing, they all become parts of the structure of how we have to put together that fabric of work to do that job properly. Technology, so this is about processes and methods that we use and the equipment that we select for that. Okay, technology can be influenced by time of year. For instance, if we are working and placing concrete at high altitudes in very cold conditions, we may have to have concrete which has got hot water treatment so that we're batching concrete at a very much higher temperature to compensate for those very cold conditions. And then we would have to think about how we insulate that concrete as it hardens. Okay, so again, that brings different work processes and methods through temperature and environmental aspects that have got to be considered. And then the people issues, what are their expectations, what are their attitudes, what are their perception, okay, what are their behaviours for both groups and individual, and levelled with that is what is their training requirements to be able to do that work, or changes in structure and technology to enable them to be able to do the work. So if they're not, they are not trained to do the work, they can't do the work if everything else is functioning above them in structure and technology. All right, okay, there's resistance to change in an organisation for a number of reasons. Uncertainty, habit, fear of losing something which they already possess, and the belief that change is not in the organisation's best interest. That's really straightforward, so I'd like you to read those. Be aware that we're creatures of habit. Okay, we're resistant to change our habits, and even if things are going wrong, we actually need somebody to pull us out of those processes, and that's why we have mentors, and that's why we have leaders to ensure that we don't put the wrong effort into the wrong things. So it's about efficiency again, and how we're doing the work and making sure that we're doing the right things as well. Okay, fear of losing something. People have invested their time into systems, and if they're familiar with the current systems, the more they resist the change. For instance, in the university at the moment, where we've been told that they will change the university Microsoft package to doing with Windows 10 by the end of the month, so I have to upgrade my computer. Okay, that'll happen over the next week. Okay, but the sorts of things is we tend to hang on to the things that we're familiar with, but we need to think about what the better benefits as we progress with that. Belief that change is not in the organisation's best interest. This is a really bad one, because what this does is the people that are resisting the change will actually moan and complain about the organisation of how it's doing its business. They'll moan and complain to others, and what we will get is some parts of the workforce that are readily adapting to those changes, and other people with poor attitudes that impact upon others and seek support for their belief that the change is not in the organisation's best interest. Okay, when organisations, when managers see resistance to change as dysfunctional, any of the following strategies can be used. So if we're finding that we're getting people that are resisting the change, we need to impact any of these to overcome that. We've got to educate, communicate better to the audience the reasons why those changes are taking place, so that logically they understand why it's necessary. The engagement with those people and participating in the organisational change. As they're learning with others, they won't feel as isolated. Facilitation and support. So people might need some counselling on that. Okay, very much so in the COVID environment that we're amid. People don't work well if they're isolated. So how do we actually support them, and how do we facilitate that? How do we keep in contact with them? Okay, for the people that are resistant to the change, we may have to do some negotiation with them to bring them on board and get what we need from them to make the organisation go forward. Okay, manipulation and co-optation. Okay, this is a really bad thing. It may get you results in the short term, but effectively what you will do as you're manipulating people is you will lose their trust of you. Okay, so as we go down this list, we're getting into worse and worse management techniques to that. Coercion is where we effectively force people to do that change. Okay, and they will resist and not like it, and they may have personal prejudices come out between them and you as a manager if you've got to coerce somebody to do it, because it's effectively a form of blackmail that they have to do this or else, and that's effectively what coercion's about. Okay, and these are managers' tools. They have advantages and disadvantages, okay, and these are listed. I'm not going to go through those, but as you read through with them, in your journal, you might have had a situation where you've undergone change in an organisation, and you may have had any one of these methods imparted to you, and you can talk about your particular aspect and the impacts that that had, whether you would agree or disagree with the outcomes that are listed on this slide. Okay, so that's the last of the slides for the lecture this week. It's just coming up to 8:30. It's bang on that. So I'll shut the lecture down. You can understand as I'm going through this, there's a fair bit of information to absorb, but at the same time, think about it, how it impacts or how it will impact on you in going into the civil engineering profession, and you might care and like to write about that in your journal notes. Okay, let's get back to the workshop. Okay, so workshop 1 is in week 1. I'll open that up. Okay, your individual reflective journal. I'll go through the outline of that shortly. It makes up 35% of your marks. You will write for each week a chapter in your journal, so you're going to have 9 chapters. Sorry, you'll have 8 chapters because week 8 there's no lecture. It needs to be done on a regular basis. Make it a weekly occurrence, guys. You'll see things through the media online that will reflect on things that you've learned through the term. They can come into the next week's journal. You don't have to rewrite previous weeks, so you'll write your first week's reflections on what you've done this week and how the week has progressed for you. You'll see some themes in the lecture that I've discussed tonight and through this workshop that you might want to address in your journal, and you can write some of the things in responses to the workshop issues as well as part of that learning. Okay, I've given you the ability to write about 2 important or interesting experience or knowledge items that you might have come across during the week. And in addressing these points, what did you learn from the class or out of the class about the weekly topic? Why were those experiences and knowledges important to you as an engineer or a future manager? How might I use those experiences as a professional student or employee? So this is about organisational structure of your learning. And I mentioned earlier a bit about your profession, being a professional student. So how do you manage your time and how do you get the efficiency out of that? All parts to how you see yourself in the world at this point in time. What else do you need to do to enable you to be confident in using these experiences or knowledges that you've picked up? Okay, what did you do well this week? What else might you need to do to improve next week? Okay, so you're a bit slow off the mark with the reading, and part of that is that you were looking at all these different courses that you're doing this week, and you were sizing those up, and from that you develop a study plan and other things that may be part of your learning. All right, so other things in the workshop that I've got for you here. In the organisation in which you work, if you're working or you've worked previously, complete the examples identified as activities in the Mintzberg managerial roles. You don't have to put all of this into your journal, okay? But I'm giving you a specific element of learning that I want you to review in Lecture 1. If you've never been employed, pick an engineering current construction project and proceed to identify examples that might link with the points in Mintzberg's managerial roles. Okay, and I've allowed you time in the workshop, if we were face to face, to have that discussion. Okay, if you want to put discussion up on the discussion board, I'm happy for you to do that, and other people will contribute to that discussion. I'll add that detail as well and moderate and give you some replies where needed. Okay. In the lecture slide, why implement organisational change? It lists forces of change. For an organisation that you've picked into, outline some of the forces of change to which the organisation is currently having to deal with. So this might come across in the media. It might come across with your experience in working within that organisation. It may come across the impacts of how COVID's impacted on that business. Okay, so you will pick some areas there of forces of change. We talked about internal and external forces of change, so you could pick some of those to talk about. You haven't got to do it all, but pick out salient points that allow you to identify that. Okay, again, for the organisation you pick, a short outline of how it was implemented for each of the 6 strategies. So how is education and communication being improved in the organisation? What about the participation of the employees? Okay. Facilitation and support that the organisation offers within the organisation with its employees. Does it do negotiation with its employees? Has it done any manipulation, co-optation with the people in, or has there been coercion? So you won't have to write about them all, but you may find exemplars in organisations that you've been associated with of how they deal with that. You could write about the University of New South Wales and how it's impacted on your education. What has happened in COVID for those students that have been here before and prior to 2020, what was happening then is by comparison now, okay, because it was very different. And the university has moved to change its strategies in regards to its educational processes. Okay. I've given you 2 journal articles listed for reading this week. They're background reading of how the construction-related organisation are dealing with the change matters. maybe you read those journal articles before you start to answer those questions. Okay, but you'll be learning a little bit. Some of that will come into your reflective diary of what you've learned for the week. And you can see why I'm not wanting you to just tell me what I've given in the lecture theatre. What I'm trying to get you to do is adapt that information to specific examples in your life and how you will take this information and use it. All right, that has got through the workshop material. Okay, the last things that I need to do are the 2 assignments. So I'll deal with the dot point brief. It's just gone nearly 8. It's gone 8:35. So the individual dot point brief. It's due on the 11th of March by 5 p.m. And what this will allow you to do is to do research on an organisation allied to the civil engineering profession. So if you want to be a structural engineer, you could do it on structural engineering. If you wanted to be a project manager in construction, you can pick a construction organisation. You could pick a supplier organisation to the civil engineering profession. Likewise, you could pick maybe a software company that's allied. So people that are doing maybe CAD or other specialised drawing, 3D drawing and the like. Any of these organisations can be pursued. It has to be an Australian company associated with the construction industry. It can be an overseas based company that's working and paying tax in Australia. Okay. So if you're from overseas and you want to write about construction companies in your organisation, I don't want you to do that. I want you to pick organisations that are working and paying tax in Australia, because you can get information about those, and I can check that information if I need to do so. It can be a civil, structural or environmental engineering company that consults and therefore pays tax in Australia. And can be associated with the engineering infrastructure market. So your project management organisation, a manufacturer or supplier, and a supplier of construction materials to the industry. Okay, so any of those allied organisations, you need only pick one. Okay, you are going to prepare a dot point brief about the organisation that doesn't exceed 3 pages. And the submission's worth 20% of the course total marks, and the penalties associated in the course outline will be applied for any received late submissions. Okay, so preparing a dot point brief, what it's about is communicating information to others in a very concise way. When you enter industry, you will find that your manager will not have time to sit and talk with you all day. So they will be doing their job, you will be doing your job, and part of that, as a reporting relationship, you'll be required to speak with them on the progress of work that's happening. And they may ask you for a dot point brief. So the purpose of preparing the dot point brief is for brevity, okay, because time is of the essence, and you may not have a lot of meeting time, to provide key information without explanation, and to present lots of information quickly, and particularly when the presentation time is limited. So if your employer asked you to prepare a dot point brief about a project that you were doing, and they said to you, can you have that to me by tomorrow morning, and so you've got a day to prepare that, they may want you to email that to them, and so without you being there, they'll read your dot point brief. So it has to be concise, and it has to hold all the information that's needed. And this assignment profile that I've written has been delivered to you as a dot point brief. Okay, it's giving you all the information with these dots, and it's quite deliberately structured so that it's concise in the points that we're dealing with. So I've underlined there, this is how a dot point brief is presented. You'll see above that, it's got a series of headings, in this case, introduction, the purpose of preparing a dot point brief, other features. If we've got paragraphs, we number the paragraphs. Otherwise, we just use the dot points. Okay, so, and I've covered those points there. Okay, you'll note that it has a heading of what the dot point is concerning. Okay, with the date of when it was prepared. Okay. In this case, you will use strict format, 20mm margins. You'll do a page number on each. You'll use 12-point times New Roman font, single line spacing, number your paragraphs, use tables, and headings are bolded. Okay, so I've told you the whole format in a very concise way of how this thing is to be written up. A separate reference list will be required from you, which may be requested to validate the information. So when I'm marking this, if I need to know where you've got the information from, you can put your online references or your journal entrances and other things that you've used that I may choose to source. The page set out needs to be clear in how you present the information and data. So you can see here that I've got good clarity in terms of how I'm presenting this dot point brief to you. And the detail is in the table below are the 12 headings that are used in preparing your dot point brief about the selected organisation that you use or that you're choosing to write about. Okay, so you have to name the company, you have to deal with what it does, identify its competitors, its employees, what its annual turnover is and profit for the last 5 years if it's available, maybe key personnel and their roles in the organisation, where does it work and what's its market, okay, current jobs that they're doing, okay, vacancies or recruiting that may be happening in the organisation. For instance, they may have won a new job and they're after, for a tunnelling project, a whole lot of tunnelling personnel. Do they partner with other organisations, and if so, can you identify current people that they do? Identify if they're expanding or contracting or maintaining their scale of operations. Okay. And lastly, what opportunity does this company offer for you as a potential employer? All right. So in that submission requirement, you've got to put some dot points around each of those 12 headings. Your dot point brief is to not exceed 3 pages in length. Okay. It will include a cover sheet and a reference list. So you'll have your dot point of 3 pages, a cover sheet on the front of it, and a reference list at the back of it. You do not have to reference your dot points. What you do is you put your reference list only at the back. Okay, and so you're only going to have 5 pages that you'll upload as your submission. You will not use a cover sheet because I will put this through a Turnitin result, and as a consequence there, the cover sheet will, if it's the same across all the assignments, it will change that bias badly. Okay, so you'll just put a simple plain sheet and your cover sheet will cover the 5 points or the 5 elements. So it'll have your name, your student ZID number. It will have the name of this course, which is CVN 9742, Professional Civil Engineering. It will be titled as the dot point brief, and you may put after that the organisation that you're writing about, and its due date and time. So 5 PM on the 11th of March. You include your reference list as the last page. You'll present that in a Harvard detail, but you won't reference in your dot point the reference list that you've put at the back. Okay, to be uploaded by 5 PM, and I've given you a few hints. You need first to do the research to gather the information and facts about the organisation. Initially complete all the information you think is needed. Your biggest hurdle will be culling the information to meet the 3 pages limit. And you need to put that information together and then progressively cull it down by over a period of time where you can reflect between your edits, and you may be able to combine information from different points that you've pulled up and how it links to your outline and the headings in order. Okay. You have to have a minimum of 2 dot points for every one of those headings. So you may have some of those headings which have got 6 or 7 dot points in it, or a table of information, but the minimum I want from them is 2 dot points. And if it gets to a situation where they have no current work, you might put in there for their current jobs, there is no current work, but the last jobs as the next dot point that they worked on were these sites and in these years. Okay, so what will happen is you'll put all this stuff together and you'll find that your dot point brief is way over 3 pages. What you progressively do is cull it down. You take out the things that are least important in the dot point brief, and ultimately you will get it down to 3 pages. And if you follow the format that I'm presenting to you with this outline, you will have done a good job. Okay. Some of you guys will actually do this within a week, and then you'll take the next week or 2 after that to reflect on the things that you need to include and take out. The reason why I'm making you do this is when you go for an interview in the future, whether you're working here or overseas, these 12 headings that I'm putting to you about a particular construction company can be any organisation that you might be wanting to work with. So, for instance, you might be wanting to join a software company and not work in civil engineering, but you take your civil engineering or your environmental engineering degree qualifications and apply for that work. In doing that, what I'm forcing you to do under this scenario is to identify what that organisation does and how it does it, and a little bit of in-depth knowledge about the organisation. So when you go in for the interview, you are not walking cold into an organisation. You've got some really pertinent detail about that organisation that you can ask about the organisation. And the people doing that interview will be really impressed with you that you've actually taken the time to understand their business. All right, so again, this dot point brief puts a tool in your learning that you can prepare yourself for industry by investigating future companies that you might be wanting to work with. Okay, that completes that detail. I'll quickly get to the reflective journal and then I'll take further questions from you. I will go through the reflective journal in far more detail next week. But to get you started for this week, it'll allow you to do that. So it's due on the 15th of April at 5 p.m. I've probably covered a lot of the things anyway with what it's about. The points that I put up into the Moodle today for the workshop, I've covered those again. And when you put your journal together, it will have a front page, it will have an executive summary, which is a 1-page maximum, and it lists, and it is written after all the chapters have been finalised, so that'll be the thing that you will be doing in week 9 to finish your journal off. It will have a table of contents, and it'll include the page referencing where those chapters, which are your weekly reports, are filed, and your weekly journal entries are not to exceed 3 pages maximum. It includes your writing, tables and figures that you want to include, and it's roughly equivalent to around 500 words a week. Okay. So I've given you some details here. You can put supplements in. They might go in as an appendix. It's not necessary that you do that, but in terms of the supplements, you may be able to include those in your weekly summary for resources that you've tapped into that help you to write about the learning for that week. Okay, a few guidance notes, separate chapter each week. Your weekly entry is limited to 3 pages. I've notionally figured that at 500 words. So you're going to be in the vicinity of 4,000 to 4,500 words. If you're going to use an appendix, think about it carefully. They can be included. I don't want a volume that's got 80 and 100 pages. When I did this, there was no limit to the page numbers that we did. There was guys there that put in 200 pages with this reflective journal. I don't want to consume all your time. I want you to be very judgmental about what goes in, but I want you to still keep it as a reflective journal, which means how does this learning impact on you and your future. Okay, I've given you here, you're at liberty to use pictures, schematics, drawings to enhance your chapter content. If you want to draw sketches, I'm happy for that too. If you're an artist and you want to put flowcharts in, happy for that to be detailed. In terms of the picture, it needs to be clear, but make sure that the picture generally doesn't occupy more than 1/3 of a page, and you use 1.15 line spacing for the journal, 12-point Times New Roman font for your weekly writing of your chapters. If you do all of the things that I've asked, you will get 70% of the available marks for this individual assignment. Okay, so that's about 24.5 out of the 35 marks. For students to excel and get a higher mark, they shouldn't focus on more material, but on more smarts of how you present that material. Maybe to cut down the writing, you could do that by sketches or flowcharts that convey all of that information. You may be dealing with personal reflections and personal observations on experiences that either support or disagree with what's in the detail. You might have some evaluations because you read the relevant newspaper articles and websites and have other stories. You may be able to get other contemporary information to support that detail that you're writing about as exemplars. Okay, and the submission details will be subjected to a Turnitin review. So you'll have a cover page. Again, it will just contain the 5 dot points that have been referred to there. You can put a picture on your cover page to enhance your learning. There's all sorts of things that you might want to do, and I'm not going to go through these tonight, but if I go back to the Moodle, you will see here in the week 1 learnings, there's readings for you to deal with and available now, and there is up here reflective journal exemplars. So when I did the course, I've taken a number of chapters out of different people's books and given you examples of how they put their journals together. What I expect I will see from all of you is that as your journal starts, it will improve week by week. I do not expect at the end of week 8 for you to rewrite your journal for those earlier weeks where it might have been at a lesser standard. What I want to see is how you've improved your journal writing and that reflective writing progressively through the journal. Okay, so lots of things to think about. I've given you a framework to work in. I have no doubt that you'll put questions onto the Moodle asking for advice. I will answer that, and that advice will be available for all to read. Okay, we're just coming up to the end of the lecture time. We started off with around about 60 to 70 students. We're down to about 46, 47 at the moment. So unless you guys have got further questions you want to ask of me on the message board on the Moodle right now, I've got nothing further to add. And I'll stop the recording shortly, so that will conclude the information. It's been a big session tonight. I thank you for bearing with it. I cover a lot of ground. And if I'm not speaking clearly enough, let me know, and I'll try and improve that for you as well. There's probably not much more than I can give you at this point. Okay, are there any questions that you want to raise on the discussion board at this stage? Okay, I'll stop sharing. Okay, so you should see me on the camera at the moment. I wish you well with your other courses this week. If any of you want to talk about courses and the master's degree overall, happy to take that conversation up with you at a later stage. I will be here mostly throughout the week. I will be away on Thursday for a greater portion of the day, and maybe Wednesday afternoon, but apart from that, I'll be here Thursday morning and also on Friday, and I'll definitely be here all day tomorrow. Okay, we'll call it stumps at this stage, guys. Welcome to the course, and I hope your other courses and lectures go as smoothly as mine has tonight from what I can see from you. Okay, I'll stop the recording and I shall say good night.